This charade has to end.
When they accused her of cheating on the MIT entrance exam, they had no idea they were about to discover the youngest quantum physics prodigy in America. What happened next will leave you speechless. In the sterile fluorescent glow of Lincoln High's administrative office, Maya Johnson sits perfectly still, her back straight against the hard plastic chair. The smell of burnt coffee mingles with the sharp scent of disinfectant, while the steady tick of the wall clock marks each passing second of her humiliation. Principal Henderson's voice drones on about academic integrity and impossible scores. But Maya's dark eyes remain fixed on a point just above his shoulder. Her face, a mask of quiet dignity. A perfect score on the physics section. Really, Miss Johnson? Dr. Patricia Williams, the district's academic supervisor, shuffles through papers with theatrical disbelief. In 30 years of education, I've seen maybe 3 students achieve this level. All from our gifted program, all with extensive tutoring. Maya's hands rest folded in her lap, steady despite the tremor she feels building in her chest. Around her, the adults exchange glances loaded with unspoken assumptions. They see her worn sneakers, the carefully mended tear in her jacket sleeve, the absence of designer accessories that mark the truly gifted students. What they don't see is the worn copy of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, tucked into her backpack, pages soft from countless readings, margins filled with her own theoretical calculations. The statistical probability, continues Dr. Williams, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses, of a student from your background achieving these scores without assistance is essentially 0. The word hangs in the air like a blade. Background. Maya's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, but she doesn't flinch. She's heard variations of this her entire 17 years. In elementary school, when teachers were surprised by her reading level. In middle school, when her science fair projects seemed too advanced for someone from her neighborhood. And now, sitting in this office that smells of institutional indifference, facing the same doubt dressed in professional language. Principal Henderson leans forward, his tone taking on what he probably thinks is paternal concern. Maya, if someone helped you, a tutor, maybe an older student, now is the time to tell us. We can work something out, but this charade has to end. Charade. Maya's fingers press slightly deeper into her palms, but her voice, when it comes, is steady and clear. I didn't cheat. Come now, Dr. Williams sighs, as if Maya's innocence is a burden she must bear. Your previous test scores, while adequate, show no indication of this level of comprehension. Quantum mechanics, theoretical, physics, advanced calculus. These aren't subjects one simply masters overnight. Through the office window, Maya can see the school parking lot where students are loading into buses, heading home to study sessions and family dinners and assumptions about their futures that no one questions. She thinks about her own route. Home, 3 bus transfers to reach the apartment she shares with her grandmother, where she'll spend the evening tutoring her 8-year-old cousin in mathematics, while Grandma Rose works her second job cleaning offices downtown. I understand you come from a challenging situation, Principal Henderson continues, his voice heavy with practiced sympathy. Single-parent household, financial struggles. Sometimes the pressure to succeed can lead students to make poor choices. Maya looks at him directly for the first time, and something in her gaze makes him shift uncomfortably. Sonyan, you want me to retake the test, she says quietly. Under supervised conditions, Dr. Williams nods. Tomorrow morning, we'll have a proctor from the district office present. If you can reproduce even 60% of these scores legitimately, We'll consider the matter closed. The adults in the room seem satisfied with this compromise, already mentally filing away another case of academic dishonesty caught and contained. They don't notice the way Maya's eyes have shifted from resigned endurance to something altogether more dangerous. They don't recognize the calculated stillness of someone who has just been handed the perfect opportunity to prove exactly who they are. "Fine," Maya says, standing with fluid grace. "Tomorrow morning." What they didn't know was that they had just challenged someone who had been solving graduate-level physics problems since she was 14. Someone who dreamed in equations and saw the universe as one elegant, interconnected, mathematical symphony. And with just one morning, one test, and one chance to show them who she really was, Maya Johnson was about to change everything they thought they knew about genius. Because sometimes, the most brilliant minds come wrapped in packages that don't fit society's expectations. Before we dive deeper into Maya's incredible story, I need you to do something for me. If stories of hidden brilliance and quiet triumph inspire you, if you believe that genius can emerge from the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is dedicated to sharing real stories of people who refused to be underestimated, and I promise every video will leave you seeing the world a little differently. Rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments. But here's the thing. I want to know which moment hit you hardest. Was it the accusation, the quiet dignity, or are you already anticipating what's coming next? And if you know someone who's ever been underestimated because of where they came from, share this story with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that brilliance doesn't have a dress code. Maya Rose Johnson had walked Lincoln High's hallways for 3.5 years, moving through crowds of students like a shadow cast by brighter lights. Every morning at 7:15 a.m., she would slip through the main entrance, earbuds in, head down, navigating to her locker with the practiced invisibility of someone who had learned that standing out often meant standing alone. The hallways of Lincoln High told stories in their very architecture. The West Wing, where Maya attended her regular classes, showed its age in scuffed linoleum and flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like dying insects. But venture east, toward the academic excellence center, and everything changed. Carpet replaced linoleum, natural light poured through tall windows, and the very air seemed to hum with possibility and privilege. Maya knew those hallways too, though she'd never been invited to walk them. During her lunch periods, when other students clustered in the cafeteria or courtyard, she would find empty classrooms where she could work on problems that her regular textbooks couldn't even begin to address. Advanced quantum mechanics theories, string theory calculations, mathematical proofs that would challenge graduate students, all scrawled in the margins of composition notebooks she bought 3 for $1 at the corner store. Teachers walked past her as if she were part of the institutional furniture. Present, necessary, but unremarkable. Mrs. Patterson, her AP physics teacher, had grown accustomed to Maya's quiet presence in the back row, always attentive, but rarely speaking unless called upon directly. When Maya did speak, her answers were precise, complete, often going deeper than the curriculum required. But Mrs. Patterson, overwhelmed with 32 students and outdated equipment, filed Maya's responses as "good student," without digging deeper into what lay beneath. The other students saw her differently. To them, Maya was the girl who always had correct homework to copy, who never turned down a request for help, but never quite became a friend. She existed in their peripheral vision, useful when they needed academic assistance, invisible when they planned weekend parties or study groups that met in the comfortable subdivisions across town. But Maya watched. She always watched. She watched as students from the gifted program moved through the school with a confidence she recognized but had never been invited to claim. She observed the way teachers lit up when these students entered a room. How college. Recruiters seemed to materialize whenever these golden children gathered. Most painfully, she witnessed conversations about summer programs at prestigious universities, internships at research facilities, opportunities that seemed to exist in a parallel universe to her own. On that Tuesday morning in November, Maya had been walking to her AP Physics class when she heard familiar voices echoing from the Academic Excellence Center. The door to Conference Room B stood slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see Dr. Williams gesturing emphatically at a whiteboard covered in equations. The quantum tunneling effect becomes statistically significant when the barrier width approaches. Dr. Williams paused, marker hovering uncertainly above the board. Maya moved closer, her footsteps silent on the carpeted floor. Through the crack in the door, she could see 6 students from the gifted program seated around a polished conference table, notebooks open, expressions ranging from confused to completely lost. These were Lincoln High's academic elite, students, bound for MIT, Stanford, Caltech. Yet they stared at the equation with the same bewilderment Maya had seen on her classmates' faces during basic algebra. "The Planck constant relationship," Maya whispered, almost involuntarily. The words were barely audible, but in the hushed conference room, they carried clearly. Dr. Williams stopped mid-sentence. The gifted students turned toward the door. For a moment, time seemed suspended in the academic amber of institutional surprise. "Excuse me?" Dr. Williams walked toward the door, her tone carrying the particular irritation reserved for interruptions by people who didn't belong. Maya stepped back, heat rising in her cheeks, but Dr. Williams had already spotted her through the gap. "Miss Johnson, Maya Johnson." Her voice remained steady despite the sudden attention of 7 pairs of eyes. "Well, Miss Johnson, since you seem to have something to contribute, perhaps you'd like to enlighten us about quantum tunneling?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could hear the subtle mockery, the assumption that she had simply overheard a phrase without understanding its meaning. Around the conference table, the gifted students shifted uncomfortably, some smirking at what they assumed would be an entertaining display of ignorance. Maya looked at the equation on the whiteboard, saw immediately where Dr. Williams had made an error in the 3rd line, noticed the missing coefficient that would make the whole calculation meaningless. She could walk away, disappear back into the shadows where she belonged. Or she could speak. The truth that burned bright and mathematical in her mind. The barrier penetration probability follows an exponential decay function, Maya said quietly, her eyes fixed on the whiteboard rather than the faces staring at her. "But your coefficient is off. It should be negative 2 pi divided by h bar times the integral of momentum." Dead silence. 7 pairs of eyes widened as Dr. Williams turned back to the whiteboard, marker trembling slightly as she checked the equation against Maya's correction. The gifted students looked at each other, then at Maya, then at their teachers. Suddenly, uncertain expression. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in the academic ecosystem of Lincoln High School. But Maya didn't stay to witness the aftermath. She turned and walked away, her footsteps once again silent on the carpet, leaving behind a room full of questions and the first crack in the foundation of everything they thought they knew about brilliance. Word of Maya's impromptu quantum physics. Lessons spread through Lincoln High's academic hierarchy faster than gossip through the cafeteria. By 3rd period, Mrs. Patterson found herself fielding questions from department heads she barely recognized, all suddenly very interested in the quiet girl who sat in the back of her AP Physics class. Has she always demonstrated this level of comprehension? Dr. Williams appeared in Mrs. Patterson's classroom during lunch, her usually perfect composure slightly frayed around the edges. Mrs. Patterson set down her yogurt cup, suddenly feeling like she was being evaluated rather than consulted. She's always been a solid student, quiet, completes her assignments. Solid. Dr. Williams repeated the word as if tasting something unpalatable. Mrs. Patterson, this morning your solid student corrected a graduate-level quantum mechanics equation that stumped 6 of our most advanced seniors. The weight of this revelation settled between them like dust motes in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the classroom windows. Mrs. Patterson found herself mentally reviewing every interaction with Maya, every quietly submitted assignment, every correct but unremarkable answer. How had she missed something so significant sitting 20 feet away for an entire semester? I want to test her, Dr. Williams continued, pulling out a folder thick with official documents. The MIT early admission exam is next week. I'm recommending her for accelerated placement. Mrs. Patterson nodded, though something uncomfortable twisted in her stomach. She thought about Maya's worn backpack, her quiet manner, the way other students seemed to look through her rather than at her. Are you sure she's ready for something like that? Dr. Williams's smile held no warmth. We'll find out, won't we? News reached Maya during her 7th period study hall, delivered by a student aide who seemed almost apologetic about interrupting her solitude. Maya read the notice twice, her expression revealing nothing of the storm building inside her chest. MIT, early admission. The words seemed to glow on the page like something conjured from her deepest, most secret dreams. For 3 years, she had watched other students receive these opportunities, had imagined what it might feel like to be chosen, to be seen as worthy of something beyond the limitations everyone else assumed defined her world. But beneath the initial surge of excitement, a colder realization crept in. Dr. Williams hadn't sought her out after witnessing her potential. She hadn't been invited to join the gifted program or offered the mentorship that seemed to flow so naturally toward students who looked different, came from different neighborhoods, carried different assumptions about their futures. This felt less like an opportunity and more like a test she was expected to fail. Maya spent that evening at the kitchen table in the apartment she shared with her grandmother. The acceptance letter spread beside textbooks she'd borrowed from the public. Library's science section. Grandma Rose worked quietly at the sink, her movements economical after 12-hour shifts cleaning office buildings downtown. The soft sounds of their domestic routine, water running, pages turning, the distant hum of their elderly refrigerator, created a cocoon of normalcy around Maya's racing thoughts. Something's got you thinking hard, baby girl, Grandma Rose observed without turning around, her voice carrying the particular wisdom of someone who had spent 73 years watching people navigate the complexities of hope and disappointment. Maya Titheen looked up from her physics problems, realizing she had been staring at the same equation for 20 minutes without really seeing it. They want me to take a test. For MIT. Grandma Rose's hands stilled on the dish she was washing. She turned slowly, studying Maya's face with eyes that had seen too much history to be easily impressed by institutional attention. That right? She dried her hands on a towel worn soft from countless washings. And how you feel about that? Maya considered the question, searching for honesty beneath the layers of excitement and fear, like they're waiting for me to prove I don't belong. Her grandmother nodded, as if Maya had confirmed something she already knew. Probably are. Question is, what you gonna do about it? Take the test, Maya said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. Good. Grandma Rose pulled out the chair across from Maya, settling her thin frame with careful precision. Now tell me what's really got you scared. The words came pouring out then. 3 years of invisible brilliance. of watching opportunities flow toward others like water following familiar channels, of having her mind full of theories and calculations that she'd never been invited to share. She told her grandmother about the equation on the whiteboard, about Dr. Williams's expression, about the way the gifted students had looked at her like she was an exotic specimen that had somehow escaped from its proper habitat. "They think I cheated," Maya finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "They think there's no way someone like me could know those things." Grandma Rose reached across the table, her weathered hand covering Maya's smooth one. "Baby girl, you've been carrying around a whole university in that beautiful mind of yours since you could barely reach this table. I've watched you solve problems that would puzzle college professors, seen you teaching yourself things I can't even pronounce. You think I don't know what genius looks like?" Maya felt something crack open in her chest, a space she hadn't realized. She'd been protecting with careful layers of modesty and self-doubt. "But they're right about one thing," Grandma Rose continued, her grip tightening slightly. "Someone like you, someone with your heart, your strength, your refusal to let the world make you smaller. Someone like you is going to change everything they think they know about who gets to be brilliant in this world." That night, Maya sat at her desk until dawn broke over the city, working through practice problems with a focus that felt different from before. This wasn't just preparation for a test. This was preparation for war. The quiet, intellectual kind fought with equations and proofs, and the devastating power of undeniable competence. She was ready to show them exactly who Maya Johnson really was. In the pre-dawn quiet of her bedroom, Maya sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, surrounded by notebooks that told the story of a mind that had never learned the meaning of impossible. The acceptance letter lay beside her pillow, but her attention was focused on a worn composition book she hadn't opened in months, the one she'd started filling when she was 14 years old. The cover was nondescript black and white marble, the kind sold in drugstore back-to-school displays for 99 cents. But the pages inside contained calculations that would have impressed professors at the world's most prestigious universities. Derivatives and integrals flowed across lined, paper-like poetry written in the language of pure mathematics. Quantum mechanics theories branched and evolved through margins, connecting concepts that most students wouldn't encounter until graduate school. Maya traced her finger along equations she'd written 2 years earlier, remembering the night she'd first understood the relationship between quantum entanglement and information theory. She had been alone in the apartment, Grandma Rose working her overnight shift, when the concept had suddenly crystallized in her mind with startling clarity. She'd filled 12 pages before dawn, her hand cramping as she raced to capture insights that seemed to pour directly from some cosmic source of understanding. This was her secret universe, the place where her mind could expand without limitation or judgment. While her classmates worried about SAT prep and college applications, Maya had been conducting thought experiments about parallel dimensions and exploring mathematical theorems that wouldn't be published for another decade. She flipped to a section, near the middle of the notebook, where her handwriting became smaller, more controlled. Here were the calculations she'd worked out during her mother's final illness, when sitting beside hospital beds and in uncomfortable waiting room chairs had required a kind of mental escape that only pure mathematics could provide. Her mother, Sarah Johnson, had been 28 when the cancer diagnosis came, just 11 years older than Maya was now. Sarah had been working 2 jobs and taking night classes toward a nursing degree, determined to build something better for herself and her daughter. The medical bills had consumed their savings first, then their hope, and finally, Sarah's strength. Maya remembered the last coherent conversation they'd had, 3 days before her mother's death. Sarah's voice had been whisper-thin, but her eyes remained fierce with the particular intensity of someone fighting to complete an unfinished sentence. "You're going to do something extraordinary, baby girl," Sarah had said, her words punctuated by the steady beep of monitoring equipment. "Not because you have to prove anything to anyone, but because your mind, it's a gift. Don't hide it. Don't make yourself smaller so other people can feel comfortable." After the funeral, Maya and Grandma Rose had sorted through Sarah's belongings, together, dividing memories between keep, donate, and the terrible necessity of discard. Hidden in her mother's bedroom closet, they'd found a box of letters, acceptance letters from nursing schools, scholarship offers, even a research opportunity at the State University's Medical Center, opportunities that had been impossible to pursue while working 60-hour weeks to pay for Maya's school supplies and keep their small apartment. She was brilliant, too, Grandma Rose had said quietly, holding a letter from the Dean of Nursing at State University. Used to solve puzzles in her head that would take other folks' pencil and paper. But sometimes life has other plans. That night, Maya had made a promise to herself and to her mother's memory. She would not waste the gift that had been passed down to her. She would not let circumstances limit what her mind could achieve, but she would also not abandon the people who had sacrificed everything to help her reach this moment. The sound of Grandma Rose moving around in the kitchen pulled Maya back to the present. She closed the notebook and padded barefoot to the doorway, watching her grandmother prepare breakfast with movements made economical by decades of practice. "You're up early," Grandma Rose observed without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." Maya leaned against the doorframe, suddenly feeling the weight of everything she carried. Her mother's dreams, her grandmother's sacrifices, her own burning need to prove that genius could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. "Nervous about that test?" Maya considered the question. Nervous seemed too small a word for what she felt. "I keep thinking about Mama, about all the things she never got to do because life got in the way," Grandma Rose finished gently. She turned to face Maya, her expression soft with understanding. "But that's not your story, baby girl. Your mama made sure of that." She walked over and placed her hands on Maya's shoulders, studying her face with the particular intensity of someone trying to memorize a moment. "You know what your mama used to say when you were little, and she'd find you working on those math problems that were way beyond your grade level?" Maya shook her head. "She used to say, 'That girl's got the universe in her head, and she's going to show the world what it looks like when genius gets to bloom exactly where it was planted.'" Standing in their tiny kitchen, surrounded by the familiar sounds and smells of home, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. The test wasn't about proving her worth to Dr. Williams or the admissions committee at MIT. It was about honoring the brilliant woman who had given everything to make this moment possible, and showing the world that Sarah Johnson's daughter was ready to change everything they thought they knew about who gets to be extraordinary. Maya arrived at Lincoln High at 6:30 a.m., a full hour before the proctored exam was scheduled to begin. The morning air held the crisp bite of November, and the school building sat silent and imposing in the pre-dawn darkness. She used her student ID to enter through the side door, her footsteps echoing in hallways that felt different without the usual chaos of teenage energy. The testing would take place in Conference Room B, the same room where she'd corrected Dr. Williams's equation just 2 days earlier. Maya pushed open the door and surveyed the space that would determine her academic future. Someone had arranged the furniture to eliminate any possibility of collaboration. A single desk centered in the room, facing away from windows, surrounded by empty space like an island of judgment. Maya set down her backpack and walked to the whiteboard, where traces of Dr. Williams's erased equations still ghosted across the surface. She picked up a marker and began writing, her hand steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. Starting with the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics, Maya began constructing a proof that would demonstrate not just her knowledge, but the depth of her understanding. She worked methodically, each equation flowing naturally into the next, building toward a conclusion that would answer the question Dr. Williams had posed to her gifted students 2 days earlier. But Maya didn't stop there. As her confidence grew, her calculations became more adventurous, exploring theoretical territories that existed at the bleeding edge of current physics research. She wrote about quantum consciousness, about the mathematical possibilities of multidimensional reality, about theoretical frameworks that most graduate students would struggle to comprehend. The whiteboard filled completely. Maya moved to a second board, then a third, transforming the conference room into a visual symphony of mathematical reasoning. Time seemed to disappear as she worked, her mind fully engaged in the pure joy of intellectual exploration. At 7:25 a.m., she heard voices in the hallway. Maya capped the marker and returned to her assigned seat, folding her hands in her lap just as Dr. Williams entered with a stern-faced woman carrying an official briefcase. Both women stopped dead when they saw the transformed room. Every whiteboard surface was covered with Maya's work, equations that spiraled and connected and built upon each other like some elaborate mathematical cathedral. Miss Johnson, Dr. Williams's voice carried a strange quality Maya couldn't quite identify. "What is this?" "Preparation," Maya replied simply. "I wanted to warm up before the test." The proctor, who introduced herself as Mrs. Chen from the district office, walked slowly around the room, photographing each board with her phone. Her expression grew increasingly incredulous with each panel she documented. "Dr. Williams," she said quietly, "these calculations, they're addressing graduate-level theoretical physics. Some of this work is beyond what I studied in my master's program." Maya watched Dr. Williams examine the boards more closely, saw the moment when recognition dawned in her eyes. This wasn't just correct mathematics, it was elegant, innovative, pushing beyond standard solutions into territory that suggested genuine original thinking. "Miss Johnson," Dr. Williams turned back to Maya, her previous condescension replaced by something approaching awe. "Where did you learn to work at this level?" "Books, library, internet," Maya answered honestly. "When you love something enough, you find ways to learn it." Mrs. Chen cleared her throat, consulting her official documents. "We still need to administer the formal examination, but I'm going to document this preliminary work as part of the testing record. This level of preparation suggests," she paused, searching for appropriate language, "extraordinary self-directed learning." The actual MIT exam felt almost anticlimactic after Maya's morning warm-up session. She completed sections on advanced mathematics, theoretical physics, and analytical reasoning with the same calm precision she'd developed during 3 years of solitary study. When she encountered problems that would typically challenge even gifted students, Maya found herself thinking of her mother's words about gifts that were meant to be shared, not hidden. She finished the 4-hour examination in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Mrs. Chen reviewed Maya's completed test booklet, her expression growing more amazed with each page. "Miss Johnson, I've proctored over 300 advanced placement examinations in my career. I've never seen performance like this." Dr. Williams sat in stunned silence, still staring at the whiteboards that had been transformed into a masterclass in theoretical physics. "Maya, I owe you an apology, a profound apology. We completely failed to recognize what was sitting right in front of us. Maya stood gracefully, gathering her backpack with the same quiet dignity she'd maintained throughout 3 years of academic invisibility. Dr. Williams, failure to recognize potential doesn't diminish the potential. It just means the system needs to look harder. As she walked toward the door, Maya paused and looked back at the room where she'd just proven everything her mother had believed about her brilliant daughter. "The universe is full of extraordinary minds," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time to start looking for them in places you've never thought to search." The door closed softly behind her, leaving two educational professionals to contemplate how many other brilliant students they might have overlooked, and what it would mean to build a system that could recognize genius regardless of the package it came wrapped in. By noon, Maya's test results had made their way through channels she never knew existed. Mrs. Chen had uploaded her documentation to the district's secure server, and within 2 hours, Maya received a call requesting her immediate presence in the principal's office, not for discipline this time, but for what the voice on the phone described as an important academic discussion. Maya entered Principal Henderson's office to find it crowded with faces she recognized but had never expected to see in the same room. Dr. Williams sat rigid in her usual chair, but her typical air of academic superiority had been replaced by something approaching humility. Mrs. Patterson perched nervously on the edge of a folding chair, clutching a folder thick with Maya's homework assignments from the past 3 years. But the most surprising presence was Dr. Marcus Webb, Lincoln, High's superintendent, a man Maya had only seen from a distance during formal school assemblies. His expensive suit and careful grooming marked him as someone accustomed to boardrooms rather than student conferences. "Miss Johnson," Dr. Webb stood as she entered, extending his hand with the kind of formal respect typically reserved for visiting dignitaries. "Please, have a seat. We have some things to discuss." Maya settled into the indicated chair, noting how the adult's attention focused on her with an intensity she'd never experienced. This was what it felt like to be seen, she realized, not just noticed, but genuinely recognized as someone whose thoughts and abilities mattered. "Your test results," Dr. Webb began, consulting a tablet that displayed official-looking charts and statistics. "They're unprecedented in our district's history. Not just the score itself, but the sophistication of your reasoning, the originality of your problem-solving approaches." He turned the tablet toward Maya, showing her performance metrics that placed her in the 99.9th percentile nationwide. "MIT's admissions committee has already contacted us. They want to fast-track your application for spring semester admission. Full scholarship, of course." Maya felt something flutter in her chest. Excitement, vindication, and underneath it all, a quiet satisfaction that her mother's faith had been proven absolutely correct. "But we need to understand," Dr. Williams interjected, her voice careful and measured, "how someone with your capabilities remained unidentified by our gifted and talented program. We pride ourselves on recognizing exceptional students early in their academic careers." Maya looked at Dr. Williams directly, seeing uncertainty and defensive embarrassment in the older woman's eyes. The question hung between them like a challenge that could be answered with recrimination or grace. "Dr. Williams, what does exceptional look like to you?" Maya asked quietly. The adults exchanged glances, suddenly aware they were being evaluated rather than conducting an evaluation. "I mean," Maya continued, "when you walk through the hallways, what kind of student do you notice? What kind of family? Background do you expect to produce genius? What neighborhoods do you recruit from when you're building your advanced programs?" The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Mrs. Patterson shifted uncomfortably, remembering how easily Maya had disappeared into the background of her classroom despite consistently perfect work. Dr. Williams found herself reviewing 3 years of assumptions about which students deserved closer attention and additional resources. That's not, Dr. Williams began, then stopped, recognizing the futility of defending a system that had just so dramatically revealed its blind spots. Maya, Dr. Webb leaned forward, his tone earnest. We want to make this right, not just for you, but for any other students we might have missed. Help us understand how to do better. Maya considered her response, thinking about all the brilliant minds that might be sitting unrecognized in regular classes throughout the district. Students whose potential was dismissed because it didn't match institutional expectations about what genius looked like. Start by looking where you've never looked before, she said finally. Stop assuming that brilliance announces itself in ways that match your existing programs. Some of us are quiet. Some of us come from families that can't afford test prep or summer enrichment programs. Some of us have learned to be invisible because standing out hasn't always been safe. She paused, gathering her thoughts around experiences these adults would never fully understand. My mother cleaned office buildings at night so I could have textbooks and internet access during the day. My grandmother still works 12-hour shifts at 73 years old so I can focus on studying instead of earning rent money. You want to find more students like me? Start looking in the places where kids are solving problems you never thought to give them, learning things they were never formally taught, achieving excellence without anyone noticing or celebrating it. The room fell silent as the implications of Maya's words settled over the assembled educators. They were confronting not just their failure to recognize one exceptional student, but the possibility that their entire system was designed to overlook potential that didn't fit predetermined patterns. What do you want, Maya? Dr. Webb asked finally. Maya thought about her mother's abandoned nursing school acceptances, about Grandma Rose's sacrificed dreams, about all the brilliant minds that had been dismissed because they emerged from unexpected places. I want you to find the next me before she graduates, Maya said simply, and the one after that, and I want to help you learn how to look. 3 weeks after Maya's test results had officially arrived from MIT, scores that broke the university's entrance examination records and prompted a personal phone call from the Dean of Theoretical Physics, she walked into Lincoln High for what would be her final month before early graduation and spring semester college admission. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Students who had looked through her for 3 years now offered tentative smiles in the hallways. Teachers whose classes she'd attended in silent anonymity suddenly seemed eager for her participation. Even the cafeteria staff, who had served her lunch without comment for years, now greeted her with genuine warmth and obvious pride. But the most significant change was institutional. Dr. Webb had moved quickly to implement what the district was calling the Johnson Initiative. Itan for the Entridien Fine to Twitor, comprehensive program designed to identify and nurture exceptional students who might not fit traditional gifted program profiles. Maya found herself in the unusual position of being consulted about her own education for the first time in her academic career. The meeting took place in the Academic Excellence Center, in the same conference room where she had first revealed her abilities. This time, however, she sat at the head of the polished table while district administrators took notes on her recommendations. For your biggest change, Maya explained to the assembled group, isn't about finding different students. It's about asking different questions. Instead of, which students look like they should be gifted? Try asking, which students are teaching themselves things we never taught them? Dr. Williams, who had become Maya's most ardent advocate after her initial skepticism, nodded enthusiastically. We've already identified 12 students across the district who fit that profile. Students who were invisible to us, but who show evidence of self-directed learning far beyond their formal coursework. Maya smiled, thinking about the conversations she'd had with some of these newly identified students. There was Carlos, who had been building complex computer programs since middle school, but had never been invited to join the computer science track. Lisa, who wrote poetry that demonstrated understanding of literary theory that wouldn't be formally taught until college. James, whose mechanical intuition had led him to design and build functioning robotics projects in his garage while struggling with standardized test scores. The other thing, Maya continued, is that identification is only the beginning. These students need mentorship, resources, and, most importantly, they need to know that their kind of brilliance is valued and supported. Principal Henderson, who had become one of Maya's strongest supporters, raised his hand. "Maya, we'd like you to design a peer mentorship program, students helping us recognize and support other students. Would you be willing to work with us on that?" The request represented everything Maya had hoped for, but never dared to expect. She was being asked not just to succeed personally, but to help create pathways for others who shared her experience of hidden potential. 6 months later, Maya walked through the halls of MIT's theoretical physics department, her student ID badge catching the morning light streaming through tall windows. But every Tuesday and Thursday evening, she returned to Lincoln High, not as a student this time, but as something far more important: a bridge between worlds that had never spoken to each other before. The Johnson Initiative had identified 43 exceptional students across the district in its first semester. Maya sat in the same conference room where her journey had begun, now leading a group of 12 newly discovered minds who carried the same quiet brilliance she recognized in herself. There was Carmen, whose mathematical poetry revealed an intuitive understanding of chaos theory. Marcus, who had been designing sustainable energy solutions in his grandmother's basement while struggling with standardized reading tests. Elena, whose self-taught coding abilities had already caught the attention of 3 major tech companies. The hardest part, Maya told them during one of their weekly mentoring sessions, isn't proving you're brilliant. The hardest part is teaching the world to see brilliance in forms it's never recognized before. She watched their faces, young people who had spent years believing they were ordinary because their extraordinary didn't match anyone's expectations. They reminded her of herself just months earlier, sitting in this same room, waiting for someone to finally notice what had always been there. Dr. Williams knocked softly and entered, carrying folders thick with college recruitment letters. The same woman who had once questioned Maya's abilities now served as the district's director of hidden talent identification, a position created specifically to ensure no other brilliant mind would remain invisible. "Maya," she said with genuine warmth, "MIT called. They want to know if you'd consider developing a national program based on what we've built here. Universities across the country are reporting similar oversights in their student identification processes." Maya looked around the room at the faces of young people whose lives had been transformed simply because someone had finally bothered to look deeper. She thought about her mother's abandoned dreams, about Grandma Rose's continuing pride, about every brilliant mind that might still be sitting unrecognized in classrooms across America. "I'll consider it," she said quietly, "but only if we can guarantee that every program starts by asking the right question. Not which students look gifted, but which students are teaching themselves things we never thought to teach them." The idea revolution hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't happened with fanfare. It had happened one recognized mind at a time, one changed assumption at a time, one institutional blind spot acknowledged and corrected at a time, because sometimes the most important discoveries happen not in laboratories or lecture halls, but In the quiet moment, when someone finally sees what was always there, waiting to be recognized.